Hello and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at Leetcode 20, valid parentheses. Given a string s containing just the characters open and closing parentheses, open and closing curly brace, and open and closing brackets, determine if the input string is valid. An input string is valid if the open brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets, the open brackets must be closed in the correct order, and every closed bracket has a corresponding open bracket of the same type. Right, so this is an easy problem. We are giving some examples here. Just regular parentheses, that's valid, true. We have here a bunch of them. They're valid, true again. Then we have some examples with false. So we have here, we're closing the wrong type of parentheses here. And here we have another valid ordering where we have a regular parentheses, then brackets, and then the closing of the regular parentheses. Okay, so the string length is between 1 and 10 to the 4th, and s consists of parentheses only, so we don't have any other input, any other characters allowed. Alright, so how do you solve this? Well, we probably need to use a stack, right, and keep track of open parentheses, because we want to be able to match the pairs. So let's go to the drawing. And we have some examples here. These are different examples than the ones we've seen before. Slightly more complex. And instead we can use a stack. And we're going to push to the stack the opening curly brace for the first example. Let's take the first example. Then we're going to push the opening brackets and then the opening parentheses. Okay, and now we have arrived to the closing parentheses. So for the closing parentheses, we'll keep a mapping of closing parentheses to open parentheses. And we're going to ask if this is equal to the mapping of the closing parentheses. And in this case, it is. So we pop this off from the stack and we continue going through the rest. We go to the next element, we go to the closing bracket. And similarly, we're going to have a mapping of a closing bracket to an opening bracket. And here we're going to ask if our opening bracket is equal to the map of this closing bracket, right? And it is. So that's valid, and we're going to remove it from the stack. Then we go to the next element, and again we're going to have a similar mapping with a closing parentheses, a closing parentheses maps to the opening parentheses. And the same here. So closing maps to opening. Closing maps to opening. Right, so our mappings map closing parentheses to opening parentheses. Yeah, okay. So we have the same situation for the curly braces. In this case, we want to map the closing curly brace, and the map of the closing curly brace is, again, as we see up above us, it's the opening curly brace, which is the one on the left. So that's also valid. And the stack is empty, and we're done, we're finished. So notice that if the stack is empty sometime before, we have to return false, because it means we have no matching parentheses for opening parentheses for these closing ones. So then we have to return false. But okay, let's see the other example as well. So we have the opening curly braces, we have the opening brackets, we have the opening parentheses, and then we have the closing brackets, right? And we check if our top of the stack element is going to be equal to our mapping of the closing bracket, which is going to be the opening bracket, and this is not true. So we just return false. So that's it. Sorry, I got confused before, and I put the opening to the closing bracket. It's the closing bracket. The mapping is going to be from the closing bracket to the opening bracket. So we check each time we have such a mapping. If our character corresponds to what we have in the stack, then we have a valid ordering. Otherwise, we have an invalid ordering, and that's it. So let's go to the code and see how this looks like. Okay, so here we are back in Leetcode. So we're going to have a stack. And we're going to have an ordering. Matchings. And we're going to go from the closing parentheses to the opening parentheses. And from the closing bracket to the opening bracket, closing curly brace, opening curly brace. Okay, and then we iterate through the characters. And if we find an opening, a closing brace, a closing parentheses, closing parentheses, and opening parentheses. So here, if we have the opening ones, we want to just push to the stack. And we said we're going to return whenever the stack is empty. It should be empty at the end. That should be true. Okay, so if we have our closing parentheses, we have to check if stack is empty or if we don't have our character. Sorry, our character from the stack, because C is the closing bracket, right? So if this is the case, then we return false. Oh, there's something wrong here. I haven't popped from the stack. We have to pop our we have to pop our character of the stack after we check it, of course. So if it matches, if it doesn't match, we don't care and we return false. But if it does match, then we pop and we go to the next element. So now it should be fine. Yeah. Okay, beats 100%. And in terms of time complexity and space complexity, we have an ON algorithm. Since we iterate through all charge in the string and push, pop, count are all O1 operations. And then space complexity, is going to be also on, since in the worst case we can have something like this. Oh, right, and that would be an on stack. So in that case, we also have an on space complexity and on time complexity, but we can also see what it says here. Oh, it's not working right now. Well, in any case, it's going to be on and on for both, for the reasons that I've just mentioned. I don't know why the server is not working right now for Leetcode. Says server is busy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this explanation. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more C++ problems. Thank you and bye.